Hello everyone and welcome to something a little bit different, what I am calling Matt's Motorsport Rambles, where every week or so I want to talk about kind of my thoughts and feelings on different things going on in the world of motorsport. Sometimes that'll be Formula 1, other times we're going to be talking about various racing series. Now, it's all going to be going on my new Matt212 Motorsport channel, or not really new. I've basically got a channel that I want to do some videos with. There'll be a link down in the description below if you're watching this on my main YouTube channel. And this first episode I want to dedicate to one of my favourite up-and-coming Formula drivers in the world right now. Of course, if you can read the title, that is Leonardo Fornaroli, because I'm a little bit worried about this guy. Positively, I think, is the best way to describe it. Now, if you don't watch the Junior Formula Series, Leonardo Fornaroli is an Italian F2 driver currently racing with Invicta this season. He is leading the championship with 3 rounds to go by 21 points over Luke Browning. Last year, he won the Formula 3 championships, staggeringly, without winning a single race. Brutal consistency right through the entirety of the campaign, and a daring last lap pass at last year's Italian Grand Prix weekend. So yeah, him claimed the championship without a single win. It was one of the reasons why I really liked him, kind of watching him. I kind of heard about him a little bit before Formula 3, and then very, very early on through the Formula 3 season last year. I kind of just loved his level-headedness and his consistency, you know. He wasn't a particularly flashy driver. He's not someone that will go out and do ridiculous moves, with probably the exception of that last lap overtake at Monza to win the championship. But he was a kind of the driver that would go out week in and week out, never kind of blitz the field, but always get the job done. He was almost like a slightly, I would argue, not a special version of Oscar Piastri. You know, where Oscar absolutely wiped the floor with Formula 2, won plenty of feature races and sprint events a couple of years ago. Fornaroli, he was always kind of there fighting towards the front, but often would rather, you know, finish P3 than risk a second place, you know, would rather take home 15 points rather than try and gain the extra 3. Now, like I said, obviously last year won F3, this year is winning in Formula 2, but staggeringly, he's not really associated with any Formula 1 team still. He's not part of a young driver academy. You know, we've kind of seen all this hype around, especially, you know, Alex Dunn this year, obviously being McLaren's junior driver, Arvid Lindblad as well being Red Bull's junior driver. Admittedly, he didn't have the best time of things last weekend at Monza, but those two are kind of highly touted to be, you know, the next drivers in Formula 1. Leonardo Fornaroli doesn't really have that hype around him, which I think is a huge, huge shame. Now, I'm sure obviously coming up through the junior ladder, you know, especially in kind of Italian motorsport as well, he was probably a little bit under the radar. You know, Kimi Antonelli was so special, and obviously now he's made it to Formula 1. You know, he was always going to be Italy's next big thing. But I think Leonardo Fornaroli definitely, you know, has the potential to become world champion material in the future as well. Given the right set of circumstances, I think is very, very important. Now, he's got the consistency, you know, clearly has shown that throughout his time in Formula 2 and Formula 3. But it is easier to teach a quicker driver to be consistent than a more consistent driver to be slightly quicker. Again, not to say that Fornaroli is slow by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, so far this year he has taken, I believe, 3 victories over the course of the campaign. The Silverstone sprint weekend, sadly, I didn't get to watch the sprint. I didn't get to see Fornaroli's first win since I became a fan of him. And then the Hungarian Grand Prix feature race, and then the sprint weekend this weekend at Monza. It's the first win I've actually seen him claim. Like, I've actually been able to watch it live. I really was debating whether I just don't watch Formula 2 anymore to make sure that he can actually wrap this thing up. But yeah, with 3 rounds to go, I kind of wanted to talk about where I feel his options might lie. Now, of course, to the surprise of absolutely nobody here, I've got no inside information. This is all speculation and kind of my own personal opinion. There are a couple of avenues he could go down. Now, obviously, I think the most obvious one for a lot of people would be why doesn't he try and get himself in the Red Bull Driver Academy, get himself, into VCARB next year as the reigning Formula 2 World Champion, as the reigning Formula 3 Champion? But there just doesn't seem to be a door for him at Red Bull. Of course, it still looks like Liam Lawson is pretty much guaranteed to be signed on, ready for next year down at VCARB. It's looking more and more likely that Isaac Hadjar will get the call-up, obviously, and switch to Red Bull. That could even happen before the end of this year, which would be fascinating to see. Honestly, I really like Isaac Hadjar. This is a bit of a tangent, but I just can't see him doing any better than anybody else has done in that second Red Bull seat alongside Max Verstappen. But yeah, so it's kind of like, obviously, it seems like Red Bull are trying to get all of their ducks in a row. And of course, if there is any space for them, it's probably going to be Arvid Lindblad that gets that call up. I think with the way, especially more recently, his season has gone, I mean, he didn't score a single point at Belgium. He failed to score points in both the sprint at Monza. The sprint in Baku, in Hungary even, I should say. And then also, obviously, the Monza feature race as well. There's been a lot of weekends this year where he hasn't been able to score points. Only two wins to his name coming back in Barcelona, and then the sprint race out at Jeddah as well. I still think Red Bull are likely going to promote him up alongside Liam Lawson if there's an opportunity there for him. So I kind of feel like for Leonardo Fornaroli that is not really going to be a choice. But I've already mentioned one driver that I think he could be in a rivalry with next year, and that is going to be the second Alpine seat. Now, there are some rumours churning at the moment that obviously if Hadjar got the call up to Red Bull, obviously Lawson looks to be staying at VCARB. What kind of happens with Yuki Tsunoda? I don't think they can bring him back to the junior team, and there are a lot of rumours going around right now that obviously Tsunoda could look to rejoin Pierre Gasly. Obviously, literally last weekend, Pierre announced a contract extension with the Alpine Formula 1 team. Of course, he and Yuki worked really, really well down at, obviously, VCARB, or AlphaTauri as it was known back in the day. So it looks like Tsunoda could be heading in that direction. Or, of course, could he be going to Aston Martin in the future as well? It's obviously, again, with his Honda ties, everything like that, could he end up being Fernando Alonso's replacement at Aston Martin in the future? Dare I believe that Lance Stroll might finally decide to call it quits? There's rumours going around that apparently he could have considered it back at the end of 2023 or even 2024. But for now, Lance Stroll is still obviously pretty much guaranteed that Aston Martin seat as long as he wants it. Fornaroli, I really did think, might be trying to make a move over to Alpine right now, because apart from that, he hasn't really got many other options, has he? Williams, of course, their lineup is basically locked down. We've already discussed VCARB. Haas, I think they're pretty happy, obviously, with Ocon and Behrman right now. Of course, again, Behrman being a Ferrari junior, Haas are always going to keep him on, I would have thought, until either Ferrari aren't interested in him anymore, or, of course, more likely, I think, is he could end up being Lewis Hamilton's replacement when the day comes as well. But you kind of look elsewhere up and down the roster. Sauber, I think, are very, very happy. Obviously, it's Audi, isn't it, really? Let's be completely honest. Hülkenberg, of course, they've got their German lineup. And obviously, Bortoleto now has been confirmed, I believe, to be staying with the team next year. Cadillac, I thought, could have been an outside shot for Leo. But obviously, they've now announced that Bottas and Perez are going to be there. He's not going to come in and join a McLaren, a Mercedes, a Ferrari, or anybody like that. So it really does kind of feel like Alpine is going to be his best option now. Invicta, Virtuosi, obviously, throughout their time, have often had some ties with Alpine. Zhou Guanyu, for example, was obviously an Alpine junior driver. Crazy to think, obviously, he never then did anything with Alpine in Formula 1. And why didn't Alpine potentially look at trying to bring him over to the team during their complete disaster that has been 2025? But I know he's a Ferrari junior driver, but it still could have made sense for them to try and get him back as well. But yeah, Leonardo Fornaroli, what happens to this kid? Because I'm starting to get a little bit worried that if he wins Formula 2 this year, obviously he then can't compete again in Formula 2, and that might spell real trouble for him. To be honest, when you look at the top four in Formula 2 right now, obviously we spoke about Fornaroli. Luke Browning, I don't really think is going to get in at Williams, to be completely honest with you. Again, they seem to be happy with their lineup of Sainz and Albon. Richard Verschoor is about 40 years old. I hope, he's going to be in an LMP2 car, I would have thought, at some point in the not too distant future. Does Fornaroli agree to do like an Alpine World Endurance program in the hopes of getting back into Formula 1? I don't think that's really going to be a wise idea for him either. I think it is really, really tricky as to what is going on right now. But yeah, it was just a little bit of a rambly video I fancied making today. I want to talk more about the Junior Formula Series and everything going on with that. So yeah, a massive thank you to everybody for watching. If you have enjoyed, please do make sure to leave a like, get yourself subscribed. Let me know down in the comments below what you think is going to happen to Leonardo Fornaroli. Do you think he'll win F2? Is this not going to be a problem if he can sign for another year? Obviously, if he doesn't win the championship and try and absolutely wipe the floor with everybody. Again, can I really see him doing that? I'm not entirely sure, but yeah, I really like the kid. I think, I really want to see him get at least a shot in a Formula 1 car and hopefully get to prove himself in the future. But yeah, let me know down in the comments below. Get yourself subscribed, and we'll be back very soon with more of, I guess, Matt212's Motorsport Rambles.